Azizi stopped breathing when the flashlight found her. At the mouth of a cold cave under a torn blanket and beside a dying fire, his mother looked up at him like she had seen a ghost. Mama Zawadi, once proud, once impossible to break, now held 3 frightened children behind her with trembling arms. The smallest girl clung to her waist. The oldest boy stepped forward with a stone in his hand. Azizi's suitcase slipped from his fingers. He had come home after 15 years expecting anger, maybe tears. Not this. Not his mother hiding in a cave, not 3 children calling her mama, and not the look in her eyes, not joy. Fear. What do you think Azizi should do first, trust his mother's silence, or force the truth into the light? Tell me in the comments. And where are you watching from today? Which country and what time is it there right now? If you enjoy emotional stories filled with mystery, justice, and healing, subscribe and stay with us for the journey ahead. Azizi had imagined this return 1,000 different ways. In some versions, his mother ran toward him crying his name. In others, she turned away in anger and made him beg for forgiveness. Sometimes she was sick. Sometimes she was older, smaller, slower, but always in the doorway of their old house, always wrapped in the smell of wood smoke and cassava, always still his mother in a world that made sense. Nothing had prepared him for a cave. Nothing had prepared him for fear in her eyes. The fire between them crackled weakly, throwing jagged shadows against the stone walls. The cave was deeper than it had first appeared, carved naturally into the side of the hill and half hidden by thorn bushes and hanging roots. A few battered cooking pots sat near the embers. A bucket of water stood in one corner. A sleeping mat woven from old feed sacks covered the earth floor. 3 children watched him as if he were a man who could ruin their lives with one sentence. Azizi took 1 step forward. "Mama!" Mama Zawadi flinched so sharply that the smallest child whimpered. "Stop there," she said. Her voice was thin but not weak. It still carried that old warning that once could freeze him in place when he was a reckless boy with muddy knees and too much pride. He obeyed without thinking. His chest tightened. "It's me," he said softly. "It's Azizi. I know who you are." The answer struck harder than if she had denied him. The tallest child, thin, dark-eyed, maybe 12, moved in front of Mama Zawadi with a stone clenched in his fist. His jaw was trembling, but his eyes tried to be brave. "Don't come closer," the boy said. She said, "Stop." Azizi looked at the child, then back at his mother. "Who is he?" Mama Zawadi did not answer. The 2 younger children hid behind her skirt. One was a boy of about 8 with wary, intelligent eyes. The other was a little girl no older than 6, barefoot and shivering in the evening cold. Her cheek rested against Mama Zawadi's hip, as though that frail body were the only safe place left in the world. Azizi swallowed hard. "Mama, why are you here? Why are you living like this?" "Go back," she whispered. He almost laughed from shock. "Go back before anyone sees you here." That was when something icy moved through him. Not because she had rejected him, not even because she looked ashamed, but because she sounded afraid for him. From the village below came the faint bark of a dog and the faraway clatter of metal pans. Evening was dropping fast over the valley. The mountain air had teeth. Azizi's expensive shirt, his polished shoes, his watch, his suitcase at the cave entrance. Everything about him suddenly felt absurd, like he had arrived from another planet wearing the wrong skin. "I crossed 3 countries to come home," he said, voice roughening. "I came to find you." "And you found me," Mama Zawadi said. "Now leave." Azizi stared at her. "You think I can walk away from this?" Her face twitched. For a second, just a second, he saw it. The mother, he remembered, the one who used to press his fevered forehead with cool hands, the one who could read every lie in his eyes before he even spoke. That woman was still there, buried under exhaustion and hunger, and years of something darker than poverty. Then she hardened again. "You should not have come back, Azizi." The oldest boy lowered the stone only slightly. "Do you know him?" Mama Zawadi hesitated. The silence lasted too long. Azizi felt it like a knife. "Yes," she finally said. "I know him. Only that. Not my son, not Azizi, my child, just I know him." The little girl peeked out from behind her. "Is he dangerous?" Mama Zawadi closed her eyes for a brief moment, and when she opened them, they shone with restrained pain. "I don't know," she said. That hurt even more. Azizi turned away and dragged a hand across his face. He had rehearsed apologies for being gone so long. He had prepared himself to face blame. He had even accepted that she might never forgive him. But this distance, this careful, fearful stripping away of love felt unnatural. Forced, as if someone had taught her that closeness was a luxury she could no longer afford. He crouched slowly near the cave wall, making himself smaller, less threatening. "All right," he said. "I won't come closer. I won't raise my voice. But I am not leaving without understanding what happened." The younger boy spoke for the first time. "Grandmother said we don't answer strangers." Grandmother. The word landed and remained. So that was what they called her. Azizi looked at each child more carefully now. The oldest boy had a sharp chin and guarded posture. The middle child had softer features, but there was hunger in the hollows of his cheeks. The little girl had tired eyes no child should have. Their clothes were clean but worn, patched, washed too many times. Mama Zawadi might be starving, but she had still tried to keep them decent. That detail broke something open inside him. He remembered her mending his torn school uniform by candlelight, remembered how she would skip meals and claim she had already eaten just to leave more for him and Nema, remembered how pride had once lived in every movement of her hands. Now those hands shook as they rested on the girl's shoulders. "Mama," he said again, quieter. "Did someone do this to you?" "No." The answer came too quickly. "Then why are you in a cave instead of your home?" No reply. "What happened to the house?" Still nothing. The oldest boy suddenly stepped back toward the fire. "She doesn't want to talk to you." Azizi looked at him. "What's your name?" The boy pressed his lips together. Mama Zawadi answered before he could. "Mosi." The name hung in the air. Beautiful. Firm. Familiar somehow, though Azizi could not say why. And the others? She hesitated again. "Baraka. Asha." Azizi nodded slowly. "I'm not here to hurt any of you. That is what people say before they hurt you, Mama," Zawadi said. Silence followed. The mountain wind hissed through the brush outside the cave. Azizi felt the words settle into his bones. That was not a sentence born from suspicion. It was born from experience. He opened his suitcase with stiff fingers. The children recoiled as if he were pulling out a weapon. Instead, he drew out a loaf of bread packets of dried meat, bottled water, oranges, soap, and a wool blanket he had bought for the journey. He placed them on the ground and pushed them forward gently. "For you," he said. No one moved. Even the fire seemed to hesitate. Asha stared at the oranges with aching hunger. Baraka's eyes dropped to the bread, then quickly lifted away as if wanting it would expose too much. Mosi remained rigid, but his knuckles whitened around the stone. Mama Zawadi looked at the food and closed her eyes. Azizi knew that look. It was not greed. It was humiliation. He hated whoever had reduced her to this. "You don't owe me anything for it," he said. "Take it." At last Mama Zawadi bent and picked up the blanket first, not the food. She draped it around Asha, tucking the edges carefully beneath the child's chin. Only after that did she hand the bread to Baraka and one orange to Mosi. not herself. Never herself first. Azizi nearly turned away to hide the tears burning his eyes. Mosi noticed. "Why are you crying?" Azizi laughed once under his breath, though there was no humor in it. "Because I should have been here." Mama Zawadi's face tightened. For the first time, anger flickered there beneath the fear. "Yes," she said. "You should have." The words struck clean and deep. Azizi accepted them. He deserved them. But still something was wrong. If she hated him for leaving, why keep staring toward the cave entrance as if expecting footsteps? Why keep listening to every distant sound from the path? Why look at his watch, his shoes, his trimmed beard, not with resentment alone, but with alarm? The answer came from outside. A woman's voice floated up from the slope below. "Zawadi, Zawadi, are you there?" Mama Zawadi went pale. The children froze. Azizi rose halfway, but she shot him a look so desperate it stopped him. "Hide the suitcase," she whispered. He blinked. "What now?" There was no time to argue. He pulled the suitcase deeper into the shadows just as an older woman appeared at the cave mouth carrying a bundle of firewood on her head. Her frame was bent with age, but her eyes were sharp and alive. She stepped inside, saw Azizi, and nearly dropped the wood. For one long second, nobody moved. Then the woman whispered, "God help us." "Mama Pendo," Azizi said. Stunned. "You know me." She stared at him as if she had seen the dead return. "Of course I know you." Mama Zawadi turned away, one hand gripping the cave wall for strength. Mama Pendo slowly lowered the firewood. Her gaze moved from Azizi's face to the children, then back to Mama Zawadi. Sorrow filled her expression, so she murmured almost to herself, "The day has finally come." Azizi stepped closer. "Then tell me what happened to my mother." Mama Pendo looked toward the darkening entrance, then back down the mountain, where the village lights were beginning to blink on one by one. When she spoke, her voice was hushed and heavy. "It is not what you think," she said, "not even close." Azizi felt the air leave his lungs. Behind him, Mosi tightened his grip on the orange instead of the stone. And in the corner of the cave, half hidden beneath an old folded mat, Azizi caught sight of something that made his heart jolt, a small wooden toy lion, one he had carved with his own hands as a boy. His mother had kept it. All these years in this cave, through hunger and shame and silence, she had kept it. The wooden lion was missing one ear. Azizi knew because he had broken it himself when he was 10, then spent 2 days hiding from shame before finally giving it to his mother anyway. She had laughed, kissed his forehead, and told him imperfect things survived longer because people remembered them. Now that same little lion sat in the corner of a cave, not in the old house, not in a trunk of family belongings, in a cave. Azizi stared at it as if it were proof that reality had cracked in half. Mama Pendo noticed where he was looking, and something in her face softened. She kept many things the old woman said quietly, even when she had nothing else. Mama Zawadi gave her a warning look. "Pendo." "I know," Mama Pendo said, "but he is here now." The children were silent again. Mosi held the orange without peeling it, as though he did not trust good things to last long enough to enjoy. Baraka sat close to the wall, watching every adult word the way children do when they have lived too long among secrets. Little Usha had fallen into a half-sleep against Mama Zawadi's lap, the new blanket pulled around her shoulders. Azizi felt the weight of everything pressing toward one point. Enough silence. He turned to Mama Pendo. "You said it is not what I think. Then tell me what I should think." Mama Zawadi's voice came low and sharp. "No." Azizi looked at her. "Why?" "Because truth is not food," she said. "It will not keep these children warm tonight." "No," he said, struggling to keep his voice steady. "But lies have kept you here for 15 years. That landed." He saw it in her face. Mama Pendo lowered herself onto an overturned bucket near the fire. She rubbed both palms against her knees before speaking like a woman bracing herself to touch a wound that had never healed. "When you left," she began, "this village changed quickly. Too quickly. People with money came, men with cars, promises, land meetings, paperwork nobody could read properly. Your mother was already alone most of the time, trying to keep the family together after your father died. Nema was still young, beautiful, trusting." At the sound of Nema's name, Mama Zawadi shut her eyes. Azizi's chest tightened. He had not heard anyone say his sister's name aloud in years. "What does Nema have to do with this?" he asked. Mama Pendo looked at the children first before answering. That small hesitation disturbed him more than a direct answer would have. Everything she said. The cave seemed to contract around them. Asha stirred in her sleep. Baraka instinctively pulled closer to Mama Zawadi. Mosi did not move at all. His face had gone blank in that practiced way of children who knew too much and wanted adults to think they knew nothing. Azizi noticed it. He noticed more than that. The way Mosi kept glancing at Mama Zawadi before anyone answered. The way Baraka bit the inside of his cheek whenever the conversation neared danger. The way Asha had clung to the word grandmother, but never once asked who Azizi was. They had been trained to survive with silence. Azizi crouched closer to the fire, careful not to startle them. "Mosi," he said gently, "how old are you?" Mosi's eyes narrowed. "Why, because I asked." That is not an answer. The boy's tone was so unexpectedly hard that even Mama Pendo blinked. Mama Zawadi put a hand on his shoulder. Respect. But Azizi did not miss the strange flicker in her expression. Not irritation. Fear. He kept his eyes on the boy. "How old? 12. Baraka answered before anyone asked him. "I'm 8. Asha, still drowsy, murmured, "I'm 6. Azizi went cold. He had already been doing the arithmetic without admitting it to himself. 15 years away. 12, 8, 6. That timeline was wrong. Wrong for the vague explanation Mama Zawadi had given. Wrong for the story of children of someone who died. Wrong for the looks on all their faces whenever the past moved too close. Azizi turned slowly back to his mother. 12, 8, 6. She said nothing. His voice dropped. These children were born years apart. Still silence. So they are not siblings from one household tragedy, he said. Not in the way you made it sound. Mosi stood up so fast the orange fell from his hand and rolled toward the fire. "Stop asking!" Baraka jumped to rescue it before it could burn. Asha woke with a frightened cry. Mama Zawadi pulled her close, murmuring comfort. Azizi raised both hands. "All right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." But inside his mind was racing. This was the first clean break in the wall of lies. The first visible seam. He looked again at Mosi. The boy was too proud, too protective, too quick to place himself between danger and the others. Something about the angle of his jaw, the fire in his eyes, the stubbornness in the way he held his chin. It clawed at a memory. Not his own face. No. Someone else's. Nema. The realization came and vanished so quickly he almost refused it. But once it had arrived, he could not push it back. Mosi did not resemble Mama Zawadi. He did not resemble some imaginary man in a story. He resembled the branch of the family Azizi had buried in memory, because it hurt too much to hold on to. Mama Pendo saw his face change. Yes, she said softly. You are beginning to see. Mama Zawadi's eyes flashed. Pendo, enough? Enough, Mama. Pendo snapped for the first time. Enough was 10 years ago. Enough was 5 years ago. Enough was the first night you slept under stone while jackals cried outside. Enough was when that child, she pointed at Mosi, learned to hold a knife before he learned to trust a stranger. The cave fell silent. Even the fire seemed to lower itself. Azizi's blood was pounding. Who are they? No one answered. He stood up fully now, unable to remain still. Who are they? Mama Zawadi looked at the cave entrance, then at the children, then finally at him. Pain hollowed her face until she looked 100 years old. Children, I could not leave, she whispered. That is not enough. It is the only answer I can give. No. His voice broke. No, Mama, not after this, not after finding you like this, not after 15 years. Mosi stepped forward again, but this time without the stone. Why do you care now? He demanded. You were not here before. The question hit with brutal honesty. Azizi stared at him. Baraka lowered his gaze. Asha hid her face again. Mama Zawadi did not defend him. Maybe she could not. He took the blow because it was deserved. I care, he said quietly, because she is my mother. The cave changed. Not dramatically, not loudly, but the words moved through it. My mother. Asha looked up first, then Baraka. Mosi did not, but his jaw tightened. Mama Pendo crossed herself in the old way and exhaled. Mama Zawadi's face crumpled for half a second before she forced it still. You should not have said that here. Why, Azizi asked. Instead of answering, she turned to Mosi. Take Baraka and Asha to the back. No, Azizi said immediately. Mosi ignored him. He took Baraka's hand and guided Asha deeper into the cave behind a jut of stone where old sacks hung like a curtain. But they were not truly gone. Azizi could still hear them breathing. Whatever was about to be said, the children had heard it before. Mama Pendo leaned forward. Azizi, listen to me carefully. In this village, names can kill. Questions can spread faster than birds. There are men who built their power from your family's ruin. Men who still watch. Men who still fear what your mother knows. Azizi thought instantly of the old house, of the 2 neat papers, of the carefully worded shame that had swallowed Mama Zawadi's name. Chief Kamau, he said. Mama Pendo's eyes widened, but not in surprise. In recognition. So there it was. Azizi felt rage gather in his chest like rising heat. What does he have to do with these children? Mama Zawadi pressed trembling fingers against her temple. He has to do with why you must leave before dawn. Azizi laughed once in disbelief. Still leave, yes. The force of her voice shocked everyone. She rose so suddenly that Asha whimpered from behind the stone curtain. Mama Zawadi swayed on her feet, weak but fierce, all the old steel briefly visible beneath the ruin. You do not understand the people you left behind, she said. You do not understand what they can do. You do not understand what it cost to keep those children breathing. Azizi moved toward her by instinct, but she retreated a step. That hurt more than the shouting. He stopped. What cost, he asked. Her throat worked. No sound came out. Mama Pendo answered instead, tears gathering in her eyes. Your mother surrendered her name, her home, her safety, her place among decent people. She let them spit on her in the market. Let them call her filthy things. Let them believe she had brought shame to your father's house. Azizi's vision blurred with fury. Why would she do that? The answer came from behind the stone curtain. Not Mama Zawadi, not Mama Pendo. Mosi, because of our mother. The boy stepped back into the firelight with Baraka and Asha behind him. His face had lost all its earlier hardness. He looked younger now, more frightened, more honest. Azizi could barely breathe. Mosi swallowed. Our mother was Nema. The world stopped. Every sound in the cave disappeared, as though the mountain itself had gone silent to hear what came next. Azizi stared at the boy, at Baraka, at Asha, at the line of Mosi's mouth, the shape of Baraka's eyes, the stubborn set of Asha's chin. Not strangers, not random children. Blood. Family. His knees nearly gave way, and he reached for the cave wall to steady himself. No, he whispered first, because the truth was too big. Then how Mama Zawadi began to cry without sound. Mama Pendo bowed her head. Mosi looked straight at Azizi, as if daring him to reject them. And in that terrible holy silence, Azizi understood one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever story he had been told about Nema's death, it had been a lie. Azizi did not sleep. He sat at the mouth of the cave until dawn, elbows on his knees, staring into a darkness that no longer felt empty. Behind him, the children eventually drifted into uneasy sleep. Asha whimpered twice. Baraka woke once and checked whether the bread was still there before closing his eyes again. Mosi stayed awake longer than the others, pretending not to watch Azizi, pretending not to care. Mama Zawadi had stopped crying, but that was worse. She had become quiet in the way people become quiet when grief is too old to make sound anymore. Only Mama Pendo remained beside Azizi through the deepest hours of the night. She fed the fire small sticks one by one and let the silence grow until it was ready to break on its own. When the first thin line of morning appeared over the hills, Azizi finally spoke. "They are Nema's children." It was not a question. It was the kind of sentence a man repeated because truth still felt unreal in his own mouth. Mama Pendo nodded. Yes, how many people know too many? And not enough. Azizi turned to her sharply. What does that mean? It means the people who matter know enough to profit from it. The people who should have protected your family know only the lie. The answer settled heavily between them. Azizi looked back into the cave. Mama Zawadi lay on her side with Asha curled against her chest, one arm stretched protectively across Baraka. Mosi had fallen asleep near the entrance, as if he had claimed the duty of guarding everyone, even in dreams. Nema's children. The phrase kept striking him like a hammer. He remembered Nema at 16 laughing as she raced him barefoot through red dust after the first rain. He remembered her singing while washing clothes by the river. He remembered how easily people loved her and how quickly that kind of light drew wolves. He also remembered the letter that had reached him years ago, the one saying she had died in an accident. Brief, cold, convenient. He had read it in a foreign city alone, exhausted, too poor to return immediately, too ashamed of his long silence to write more than a broken apology. By the time he had gathered enough to come back, life had swallowed the years. Now those years stood before him in the forms of Mosi, Baraka, and Asha. Alive. Unprotected. Buried with his mother in a cave. Azizi rose to his feet. Mama Pendo saw it in his face and frowned. What are you planning? I'm going to the house. Her expression darkened instantly. Not alone. I won't wait. That is exactly what reckless sons say before they make widows out of the women who raised them. He almost argued. Then he heard his mother cough inside the cave, a deep, tearing cough she tried to smother so the children would not wake. That sound changed something. Not his anger. That remained. But it sharpened it. I am done standing outside my own life, he said quietly. If they stole our home, I want to look them in the face while they explain it. Mama Pendo stood with a groan and dusted off her skirt. Then I am coming. Somebody needs to tell you when pride is louder than wisdom. By sunrise, the village had begun to stir. Smoke rose from cook fires. Roosters announced themselves like arrogant little chiefs. Women with basins balanced on their heads moved along the narrow paths in pairs. Children chased one another between mud walls and corrugated roofs. Motorbikes coughed awake in the distance. It was an ordinary morning in every visible way. That almost made Azizi angrier. How dare the world look normal when his mother had spent years sleeping under stone? As he and Mama Pendo descended the slope, eyes followed them. At first only a few, then many. Recognition moved through the village like wind in dry grass. Azizi has returned. He saw it happen silently, face to face, doorway to doorway. Some people pretended not to stare. Some stared openly. Some looked at him and then quickly toward the upper ridge where the cave was hidden, as if measuring how much trouble had finally arrived. Then he saw the house. For a moment, he stopped breathing all over again. It still stood beneath the great jacaranda tree at the center of their family plot. The walls had been repainted a pale cream. The front veranda had been widened. Iron bars covered the windows now. A satellite dish perched on the roof like a flag of conquest. Even the old mango tree he and Nema had climbed as children had been cut back into a neat, obedient shape. Everything familiar had been polished into insult. Nothing about it said abandonment. Everything about it said possession. Azizi crossed the yard without slowing. A woman he did not know was sweeping the front steps. She looked up startled, then alarmed. "Can I help you?" "Yes," he said. "Tell the man inside that Azizi, son of Kito and Zawadi, has come home." The broom slipped in her hands. So the name still meant something. She disappeared inside without another word. Seconds later, the door opened. Uncle Jabari stepped out wearing a crisp tunic, leather sandals, and the smugness of a man who had grown too comfortable in another person's inheritance. He had aged, of course. His beard was fuller, his belly softer, his eyes smaller beneath folds of easy living. But Azizi knew him instantly. The same uncle who had once laughed too loudly at funerals and smiled too quickly when land was discussed. The same uncle who always placed one hand on a grieving shoulder while the other reached for advantage. For one stretched second, they simply looked at each other. Then Uncle Jabari smiled. "Azizi," he said warmly, as if this were a reunion blessed by heaven. "My son, at last." Azizi did not move. "Don't call me that." The smile did not fully disappear, but it thinned. Mama Pendo stopped beside Azizi like a witness called by fate. Uncle Jabari glanced at her and sighed. "Ah, so that is how this morning begins." Azizi's gaze swept past him into the house. New furniture, new curtains, a polished cabinet where his father's carved stools used to stand. Their past had not been preserved. It had been overwritten. "When did you move in?" Azizi asked. Jabari spread his hands. "After the family crisis. There was no one responsible left here. Somebody had to protect the property. From whom? From decay. From squatters. From chaos." His tone remained smooth. "You were gone. Your mother was not in a stable condition." Azizi felt his jaw tighten. "Say it plainly." Jabari's eyes flickered. People were talking. About what? He shrugged. About shame. About those children. About her conduct after Nema's tragedy. You know how villages are. There it was, the lie packaged as concern. Azizi took one step closer. "My mother did not surrender this house." Jabari looked almost offended. "There are papers. Show me." That startled him, though only briefly. "Now, yes, now." A few villagers had gathered near the road pretending to be busy while listening with their whole bodies. A boy pushing a bicycle slowed to a stop. Two women carrying cassava paused at the gate. A shopkeeper leaned against his doorway across the path and stopped arranging crates. Azizi saw all of them. Good, let them hear. Jabari hesitated just long enough to reveal weakness before stepping aside. Come then. Let us speak like family. Inside the house smelled wrong. Not rotten, not unpleasant, just wrong. The old scent of millet soap, medicinal herbs, and warm clay was gone. In its place lingered furniture polish, imported cologne, and the stale air of a place arranged for appearance rather than memory. Azizi stood in the main room and felt rage rise in clean, deliberate waves. That corner had once held his father's radio. This wall had once displayed Nema's school certificate. Here Mama Zawadi had sat sewing under a kerosene lamp long after midnight. There on the windowsill, Azizi had once hidden a slingshot and been beaten for it when a chicken mysteriously died the next morning. He could see the ghosts of ordinary life everywhere. Jabari crossed to a locked cabinet, took out a folder, and laid several papers on the table. Here, Azizi read fast, then slower, then again. A declaration of voluntary transfer. A witness signature. A local administrative stamp. A statement describing Mama Zawadi as mentally distressed, morally compromised, and unable to manage land or assets. The world narrowed to the page. Mama Pendo made a sound of disgust. Liars. Azizi looked closer at the signature line. It bore his mother's name, but not her hand. He knew his mother's handwriting. He had just seen it in the letters from the cave firm, slanting, disciplined even through pain. This signature was stiff, uncertain, almost childish. An imitation by someone who believed poor women had no right to consistency. He set the paper down very carefully. This is forged. Jabari gave a weary chuckle. Be careful, Azizi. Big accusations invite bigger consequences. So does theft. The older man's face cooled a degree. Mind your tone. My tone. Azizi leaned over the table. My mother is living in a cave. At that, Jabari's gaze sharpened, not with guilt, but with calculation. Then you found her. Mama Pendo sucked in a breath. Azizi caught it. You knew. Jabari did not answer. You knew where she was. Still nothing. A terrible clarity moved through Azizi. Not surprise. Not yet, just alignment. Pieces clicking together. This man had not merely benefited from Zawadi's disappearance. He had monitored it, managed it, perhaps even maintained it. Jabari folded his hands behind his back. Your mother made choices. Wild choices. Dishonorable choices. I took responsibility when others would not. Azizi stepped around the table so quickly that chairs scraped. Say one more word against her. The woman from the steps gasped from the doorway. More villagers had crept closer outside. The room was no longer private, no matter how hard Jabari might wish it. He lifted his chin. You return after 15 years with city shoes and foreign anger, and think you understand anything. Your mother disgraced this family. I contained the damage. That was the wrong word. Contained. As if Mama Zawadi had been a disease. Azizi's fist closed, but he did not strike. Not because Jabari did not deserve it, because Mama Zawadi deserved better than a son who handed her enemies a spectacle instead of justice. So he smiled. It was the first thing he had done all morning that truly unsettled Jabari. Azizi straightened and looked toward the open door, making sure his voice carried beyond the walls. Then we will do this properly, he said. You will show these papers to everyone. You will explain why my mother's signature changed. You will explain how a grieving widow became unfit just in time for you to inherit her roof. And you will explain why a woman you claim disgraced the family had to disappear for you to sleep well in her bed. Murmurs rose outside immediately. Jabari's calm cracked for the first time. You should be careful whose name you drag into this. Azizi heard the warning beneath the words. Not whose names. More than one person. He stepped past his uncle and out onto the veranda facing the villagers gathering in the yard. The morning sun hit his face hot and merciless. Listen well, he said. I went looking for my mother. I found her living in a cave. And before this day ends, I will know exactly who put her there. The silence that followed was so complete, it felt like the village itself had stopped to choose a side. Then from somewhere near the gate, an old man muttered the name nobody had yet dared say aloud. Chief Kamau will not like this. Azizi turned toward the voice, and for the first time Uncle Jabari looked afraid. By noon the village no longer belonged to routine. It belonged to rumor. Women abandoned their grinding stones halfway through millet. Men who should have been in the fields drifted toward the market square in 2s and 3s, pretending they had errands. Young boys climbed low walls for a better view of adults, whispering with faces too serious for ordinary gossip. Even the goats seemed restless, tugging at their ropes, as though they could smell the heat of old secrets rising from the ground. Azizi walked away from the stolen house with Mama Pendo beside him, but he felt every eye following his back. Not all those eyes were hostile. Some were curious, some were guilty. Only a few held something like pity. That pity enraged him more than open scorn. Pity meant people had known enough to feel sorry, but not enough or not bravely enough to act. What now? Mama Pendo asked as they reached the shade of an acacia near the path leading back toward the cave. Azizi stopped walking. His mind was moving too fast, crossing years in seconds, stitching together details that had once seemed unrelated. Forged papers, a house taken under the language of shame, his mother hidden in a cave while the village called her disgraced, Nema dead, 3 children alive, Chief Kamau's shadow over everything. Now one truth sat at the center of it. Someone had needed him gone, not by accident, not by distance alone, gone enough not to ask questions, gone enough not to return in time, gone enough to let his family be dismantled piece by piece. He looked at Mama Pendo. The letters. She frowned. What letters? The ones my mother wrote. The ones I found in the cave. His voice sharpened with realization. If she wrote to me for years, then someone made sure they never reached me. Mama Pendo's expression changed slowly, as though a door had opened in a dark room she had avoided for too long. Yes, she murmured. Yes. Azizi took a step closer. You knew I suspected. Shame flickered across her face. But suspicion is not proof, and proof can get an old woman buried sooner than she planned. That was not cowardice, that was village arithmetic. Survival. Who handled mail here? Azizi asked. Mama Pendo answered immediately. For years, the trading post near the bus road. Then later the cooperative office. But before anything left the village, it always passed through hands that watched too closely. Whose hands? She hesitated. Azizi's patience thinned. Mama Pendo. She lowered her voice. Jabari had friends there. Kamau had more. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of dust and sun-heated grass. Azizi closed his eyes for 1 second, trying to steady the rage building in him. He remembered those first years away, the cheap rented rooms, the factory noise, the double shifts, the days he checked for letters and found none. He had told himself his mother was too angry to write, that Nema had moved on, that silence was punishment he deserved for leaving. He had swallowed that silence like poison and called it fate. It had been manufactured. I want every letter, he said. All of them are in the cave, are they not? His eyes opened. Not all. Mama Pendo looked at him carefully. He could still see the torn page in his mind. One letter missing half its body, not damaged by time, removed, taken by fingers, hidden for a reason. And if one letter had been altered more, had likely been intercepted long before they reached the cave wall. He turned toward the market road. "Take me to the old trading post." The trading post sat where the red dirt road widened before bending toward the bus route, an ugly cement box with faded advertisements painted across its walls and a rusting tin roof that snapped in the afternoon heat. In Azizi's childhood, it had sold salt paraffin batteries, cheap biscuits and envelopes. Now half of it had become a mobile money kiosk. The other half still smelled of paper kerosene and old sugar. A broad-shouldered man with clouded eyes stood behind the counter counting coins into stacks. He looked up only once, then froze. "Azizi," he said. Azizi recognized him after a second. Omari. Omari had been older than him by several years. One of those village boys who grew into watchful men without anyone noticing. He had once fixed Azizi's bicycle chain and cheated Nema at cards. Now there was too much caution in his face. Mama Pendo spoke first. "We need to ask about letters." Omari's shoulders tightened, almost invisibly. "What letters?" Azizi stepped up to the counter. "The ones my mother wrote to me after I left." Omari gave a short, humorless laugh. "That was many years ago. I know how time works." The man glanced toward the road, then toward the rear doorway. No one emerged, but the glance itself was an answer. Fear lived here, too. "We were not the post office," Omari said. "We only helped villagers send what needed sending." "And did my mother bring letters here?" His silence lasted too long. Azizi leaned both palms on the counter. "Did she?" "Yes." Omari muttered. Mama Pendo shut her eyes. The word was small, but it changed the temperature of the room. Azizi's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. "How many I don't know. Try." Omari swallowed. "Many. How many reached me?" The man did not answer. Azizi waited. At last Omari whispered, "None that I know of." The room became very quiet. Outside, a motorcycle rattled past. Somewhere nearby, a radio played a love song too cheerfully for the wait inside that little shop. Azizi stared at Omari as if he were trying to decide whether the man standing before him was merely weak or truly rotten. Why, Omari rubbed his jaw. Some letters were taken. By who? No answer. Azizi slammed one hand flat against the counter, hard enough to make the coins jump. By who? Omari flinched. Jabari's man came sometimes. Other times. Instructions came from the chief's office. Mama Pendo made a bitter sound in her throat. Dogs. Azizi's heartbeat pounded in his ears. Instructions to do what? To hold them. Omari's face was pale now. To say they would be sent later. To tell your mother there were transport delays. To say the address was unclear. To say foreign delivery was expensive. To say anything that bought time. Azizi laughed once, but it was a frightening sound. Bought time for what? Omari looked at him with naked unease. For you to disappear from the story. That sentence cut cleaner than any blade. For you to disappear from the story. Azizi felt with terrible clarity the shape of the trap built around him. Not just a house stolen, not just a mother shamed. An heir erased, a witness removed, a son turned into absence. "Did you ever read them?" he asked. Omari looked offended, then guilty, then tired. "One." Mama Pendo hissed, "May God judge you." "What did it say?" Azizi asked. Omari hesitated, then reached beneath the counter into an old metal box. From under receipts and bound twine, he pulled out a worn envelope, yellowed at the corners, never stamped. Azizi stared at it. His own name was written there in his mother's hand. He knew the shape of the letters immediately, the disciplined slope, the careful pressure. His throat closed. "I kept this one," Omari said. "I should not have, but I did." "Why? Because after reading it, I could not burn it." Azizi snatched the envelope, though his fingers trembled. He opened it carefully, as though roughness might injure the hand that had written it years ago. The letter inside was short, not because Mama Zawadi had little to say, because fear had forced her to choose only what mattered most. "My son, if this reaches you, come home before they finish taking everything. Do not believe the lies you may hear about me. I am still your mother. Nema is gone, but not by the story they told. There are children here who belong to your blood, and who will die in darkness if God does not send help. I cannot write all names because the walls themselves have ears now. If you love us, come before the rain season ends." Your mother Zawadi Azizi had to read it twice because the first time his vision blurred too badly. There it was, plain, direct, desperate. She had called for him, not once, not vaguely, but clearly, and he had never come because men with clean clothes and filthy hearts had decided he must not know. His hands began to shake harder. Mama Pendo pressed one hand to her mouth. Omari looked away. Azizi lifted his eyes. "How many more? I don't know where they all went," Omari said quickly. "Some were destroyed, some were taken. One I remember clearly because there was shouting over it." What letter? Omari's voice dropped to a whisper. "The last one she sent before she stopped coming here." Azizi thought instantly of the torn page. "What was in it? I never read the whole thing. Only a line." Omari swallowed. It named someone. Who? Omari's face went grey. "I cannot." Azizi stepped around the counter so fast the man stumbled backward. "Who?" it mentioned. Kamau. Omari burst out. Chief Kamau. And Nema. And something about the children being proof. Silence crashed over the shop. Proof. The word hung there like a storm cloud, not suspicion, not gossip. Proof. Azizi released a slow breath that did not calm him at all. "Where is that letter now?" Omari shook his head frantically. "Taken, I swear." Jabari came with another man from the chief's compound. They argued. The page tore. I saw it tear. Mama Pendo whispered, "The missing half." Azizi turned back toward her. "So the torn letter in the cave was the piece they did not get," she said. He looked down at the letter in his hand again. Every line felt like a grave reopening beneath his feet. Then another thought struck him. Why did my mother stop sending letters? Omari answered in a flat voice, as if ashamed to say it. Because someone told her you had remarried abroad and wanted nothing from this village anymore. Azizi went still. Another lie. Another cut. Not enough to silence him by force. They had needed to silence her too. Needed her to believe he had abandoned her willingly. Mama Pendo closed her eyes in grief. Those devils. Azizi folded the letter with extreme care and slid it inside his shirt over his heart. Then he looked at Omari not with blind rage now, but with a frightening steadiness. You will say all this again, he said, in front of everyone. Omari's lips parted. If I do that, they will destroy me. Azizi's expression did not change. Look at what they already helped destroy. The man broke eye contact first. Outside, shadows had lengthened. The village was waiting, watching, listening for the next crack in the old wall. Azizi stepped back toward the doorway. For the first time since returning, guilt and grief made room for something colder, stronger, more precise. Purpose. He no longer had only pain. He had evidence, and somewhere in this village, the missing half of a letter was still breathing inside someone's fear. Azizi climbed back to the cave before sunset, with dust on his shoes, fury in his chest, and his mother's letter pressed against his skin like a second heartbeat. The children saw him first. Mosey was outside, crouched beside a flat stone, sharpening a short kitchen knife with slow, careful strokes. The sound scraped through the evening air like a warning. When he noticed Azizi, he stood at once and slipped the blade behind his back. "You came back," Mosey said. It was not welcome. It was not relief. It was surprise wrapped in caution, as if the boy had spent too much of his life learning that adults said many things and kept very few promises. "I said I would," Azizi replied. Mosey studied his face. "People leave anyway." Azizi did not answer that. There were too many ways in which the boy was right. Inside the cave, the fire had been rebuilt. Baraka was peeling cassava with his head bent low, careful not to waste a scrap. Asha was asleep under the wool blanket, one thumb curled near her mouth. Mama Zawadi sat against the wall, shoulders drawn inward, sewing a tear in Baraka's shirt with thread so thin it looked stolen from the edge of survival itself. The sight hit Azizi harder now than it had the first time. Not because it was new, because it was no longer only shocking. It was intimate. Every object in that cave had a story of humiliation attached to it. Every habit had been learned to outlast cruelty. Mama Pendo, who had returned ahead of him by a different path, looked up from the fire. She knew from his face that something had shifted. "You found something," she said. Azizi reached inside his shirt and drew out the letter. Mama Zawadi froze. He held it toward her without speaking. For a second she did not breathe. Then her fingers trembled so violently she had to use both hands to take it. Her eyes moved over the handwriting. Her own handwriting, as if she were looking at the face of a younger self, long buried under dust and shame. "This one," she whispered. "I thought they burned this one." "They kept it from me," Azizi said. "Like the others." Silence spread through the cave. Baraka stopped peeling. Mosey came inside, no longer trying to hide the knife. He leaned near the entrance, listening with the stillness of a child who had learned that words could be more dangerous than weapons. Mama Zawadi lifted her gaze to Azizi. There was no surprise in it now, only exhaustion and an old pain finally cornered. So she said softly, "You know, I know enough to understand that I was lied to." He knelt before her, but not too close. He had learned that already. "I know you wrote to me. I know Jabari's people intercepted the letters. I know someone told you I had abandoned you." Her lips parted slightly. "That lie reached you too, didn't it?" he asked. She looked away. Mama Pendo answered in a low voice. "Yes." Azizi shut his eyes for 1 second, trying to contain the violence of what he felt. Men had not only stolen land and shredded truth, they had built a wall between mother and son and fed each side poison until both believed the other had chosen absence. When he opened his eyes again, they went to the children. And I know he said voice rough that they are Nema's. No one moved. Mosey's chin lifted as if he were preparing for judgment. Baraka held the cassava knife so tightly his knuckles whitened. Asha stirred in sleep but did not wake. Mama Zawadi pressed the letter to her lap. "Yes." The word entered him like cold iron. He had already heard it. He had already believed it in part, but hearing it from her made it final. Azizi swallowed. "Tell me." She shook her head almost immediately. "No." "Mama, no." Her voice sharpened. "Do not ask me to rip open what I stitched shut, just to keep breath in those children." Azizi leaned forward. "It is already open. That is because you came back. And thank God I did." The force of his answer startled even him. Mama Zawadi stared at him. He continued quieter now. I cannot protect this family from shadows, Mama. I need the truth. At that word, Mosi suddenly laughed. It was a terrible sound on a boy so young. Truth, he said. Everybody says truth when they mean trouble. Mosi Mama Pendo warned. But Azizi looked at him carefully. Who taught you that? The boy's eyes flashed. The village. That answer told Azizi more than pages could have. He turned back to Mama Zawadi. Start with Nema. Her face changed at once. The name alone could still wound her. For a long time she said nothing. The fire cracked softly. Outside, the wind dragged itself through the brush at the mouth of the cave. Somewhere far below, a motorcycle coughed and faded into the road. Then Mama Zawadi began. After you left, she said, Nema changed. Not all at once. Slowly. She smiled less. She spent more time near the market road saying she was looking for better work. There were men coming through the village then. Development men. Traders. Politicians' assistants. Men who wore watches and spoke softly and made poor people feel seen until it was too late. Azizi's jaw hardened. One of them noticed her Mama Zawadi continued. Or maybe he had already noticed this family. Sometimes I still do not know which came first. Who, Azizi asked, though a name was already forming like thunder in his mind. Mama Zawadi looked at the children before answering, as if even now she wanted to protect them from the ugliness of origins. Chief Kamau, she said. Mosi looked away. Baraka lowered his head. So they knew that name well. Azizi felt rage rise clean and hot. Kamau touched Nema. Mama Zawadi flinched at the word touched because it was too gentle for what had happened. He promised work in town, she said. Promised school fees. Promised help with the house. Promised to speak to people who could send money to you so you would come home successful. He wrapped greed in kindness. Your sister was young, Azizi. She wanted hope to be real. Mama Pendo muttered, and Kamau has always known how to sell poison in a golden cup. Mama Zawadi kept going, each sentence sounding like it cost her flesh. When Nema first became pregnant, Kamau denied everything. Said she was a liar, said girls who wanted quick money invented stories. Jabari told me to keep quiet. Told me the family name could still be saved if Nema was sent away before people counted months too carefully. Azizi felt sick. Mosi, he said hoarsely. Mama Zawadi nodded. Mosi's face did not change, but his throat moved once. Nema gave birth in secret at a widow's hut 2 hills away, Mama Zawadi said. I carried Mosi back at dawn beneath meal sacks so no one would see. The village still talked, of course. Villages always do. But Kamau paid for silence where gossip was too near the truth. Jabari helped him. He said keeping peace was better than bringing ruin on all of us. Azizi almost laughed from disgust. Peace. Men like that always called cowardice peace when it benefited them. And Baraka, he asked. Mama Zawadi shut her eyes. Kamau returned. The cave became smaller. He knew Nema had no power, she said. He knew people already looked at her with blame. He knew shame makes a woman easier to trap the second time because she no longer believes anyone will defend her. Asha stirred under the blanket and murmured in sleep. Mama Zawadi's hand went automatically to tuck the cloth beneath her shoulder before she continued. By the time Baraka was born, Nema had stopped asking for justice. She only asked to leave. She said she wanted to go far away with the children. I begged her to wait, to let me think, to let me find a way. I thought if I could get word to you. Her voice broke. Azizi stared at the ground. All those years he had thought absence was a wound he inflicted. Now he saw what it had enabled. And Asha, he asked, though part of him feared the answer. Mama Zawadi looked at the little girl with a grief so deep it seemed older than language. Asha is not Kamau's. Azizi blinked. That he had not expected. Then whose? No answer. He lifted his eyes. Mama, She hesitated so long that even Mosey stepped forward a fraction, as if he too needed it spoken aloud. At last she said, "Nema tried to run." Mama Pendo lowered her head. "She left before sunrise with Mosi and Baraka," Mama Zawadi said. "She planned to reach the bus road and disappear before anyone noticed. But she never made it far. Kamau's driver found her. There was another man with him, a younger man. Drunk, cruel, one of those men who laugh when women cry." Azizi's hands clenched. They dragged her back. Mama Zawadi nodded once. And months later, Asha was born. The words landed like stones dropped into a deep well. No one in the cave spoke. Baraka's eyes filled first, though he tried to hide it by bending lower over the cassava. Mosi stood rigid, face emptied of expression, because feeling too much had once been dangerous. Even Mama Pendo seemed unable to breathe. Azizi looked toward Asha, small beneath the blanket, innocent of the violence that had carved the road to her birth. Something inside him changed shape right then. The children stopped being only evidence, only tragedy, only Nema's legacy. They became his responsibility. "How did Nema die?" he asked. That was the hardest question. Mama Zawadi's mouth trembled before she answered. "They called it an accident. Said she slipped near the quarry road during the rains." Azizi said nothing. "She did not slip." Mama Zawadi whispered. Mosi looked up sharply. Baraka stopped moving altogether. Even now, perhaps they had never heard it put so plainly. "She came to me the night before," Mama Zawadi said. "She said she finally had proof. Something that could destroy Kamau if it reached the right ears. She said she had hidden it. She said if anything happened to her, I must protect the children before all else." The letter Azizi murmured. "The missing half." Mama Zawadi nodded through tears. She was dead by the next day. The cave went silent except for the fire. Azizi felt a terrible calm settle over him. Not the calm of peace, the calm of a blade being sharpened. "So that is why you took the children?" He said, "Yes." "And let the village believe they were yours?" "Yes, and let them spit on you." A weak smile passed over her lips, bitter as medicine. "Spit is lighter than graves." Azizi's eyes burned. He reached out this time slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. For one breath she did. Then, with a sound that was almost a surrender, Mama Zawadi let his hand cover hers. It was the first touch between them in 15 years. Her skin was thinner than he remembered, colder, fragile. Azizi bowed his head over their joined hands. "You should have never carried this alone." "No mother says that while her grandchildren are still alive," she whispered. Mosi turned away sharply, pretending to check the fire. Baraka wiped his face on his sleeve. Asha slept on, unaware that the truth had finally entered the room whole enough to hurt everyone equally. Azizi raised his head. "What proof did Nema hide?" he asked. Mama Zawadi's fingers tightened around his with sudden fear. "I don't know where all of it is," she said. "Only that one piece was in the letter they tore. And the rest—" She looked toward the darkness outside the cave. "The rest is why they would kill to keep us silent." The cave did not feel cold that night. It felt watched. Even the fire seemed careful, burning low, as if too much light might invite eyes from the dark hillside. Azizi sat near the entrance with Mosi's kitchen knife across his knee, not because he planned to use it, but because he wanted the children to see that someone else was willing to keep watch for once. Mosi noticed. He noticed everything. "You hold it like a man who learned with better knives," the boy said quietly. Azizi glanced at him. "I learned with hunger. That teaches fast." For the first time, something almost like respect flickered in Mosi's face. Not trust, not yet, but the beginning of a change. Behind them, Baraka slept lightly beside Asha. Mama Zawadi had finally drifted off from exhaustion, though even in sleep her hand remained stretched toward the children. Mama Pendo snored softly against the wall, one arm wrapped around a sack of cassava, as if even dreams in this place required guarding. Azizi stared into the darkness beyond the cave mouth and replayed every word from earlier. Chief Kamau, Nema, proof, a torn letter, a staged accident. The pattern was no longer blurry. It was brutal and clear. What he still lacked was enough to destroy the men who had built their power on silence. Mosey moved closer and sat beside him. "Are you going to leave in the morning?" the boy asked. Azizi looked at him. "Why? Because adults always say big things at night. Morning makes them smaller." The sentence was too old for a 12-year-old mouth. Azizi leaned back against the stone. "No, I'm not leaving." Mosey studied him for a moment. "Even if Kamau comes, especially if Kamau comes." The boy said nothing. Then, after a long pause, "He won't come himself first. Who will men who smile too much?" Azizi nodded slowly. That too sounded learned. He rested the knife across his lap again. "Then let them come." They did not come at dawn. They came after sunrise, when light made everything look harmless. 3 men walked up the slope in clean clothes and expensive sandals, carrying the kind of politeness poor people were expected to fear. One of them Azizi recognized vaguely from childhood, a clerk who used to stand near Chief Kamau at public gatherings, laughing a second too late at every joke. Another was younger, broad-shouldered, with the dead eyes of a man who enjoyed following cruel orders. The third carried a leather folder beneath one arm. Not soldiers. Messengers. Which was worse. Mosey saw them first and went rigid. Baraka pulled Asha behind him. Mama Zawadi's face drained of color so quickly that Azizi felt anger rise before the men had even reached the cave mouth. The oldest messenger smiled. "Peace to this household." Azizi stood. "You're speaking to a cave." The man's smile did not move. Then peace to the cave. Mama Pendo muttered under her breath, "Snakes can also speak politely." The messenger ignored her. His gaze settled on Azizi with oily calm. "You must be the returned son." "I must be. We bring greetings from Chief Kamau." Azizi crossed his arms. "Then take them back." The younger thug took half a step forward, but the older man lifted a hand to stop him. His smile thinned. "Chief Kamau understands that grief can make people emotional. He also understands that returning after many years may create confusion." Azizi let out a short laugh. "Confusion? Is that what you call forged papers and a widow in a cave?" The man glanced briefly at Mama Zawadi, then away, as if even looking directly at her might stain the fiction he had come to perform. "We are not here to argue," he said. "We are here to restore harmony." There was that village poison again. Harmony, peace, dignity. Men like Kamau hid violence beneath respectable words, the way butchers wrapped blades in cloth. The one carrying the folder stepped forward and opened it. Inside were official-looking documents, fresh paper, new seals. He spoke for the first time. "By instruction of the chief's office, the family of the late Quito may be offered a private settlement in order to avoid unnecessary public disorder." Azizi's face went still. There it was. Not justice. A transaction. He did not touch the papers. "Say it plainly." The first messenger obliged. "The house can be returned." Mama Pendo sucked in a breath. Baraka looked up sharply. Even Mosey blinked. The messenger continued, "A parcel of additional land will be granted. A sum of money will be provided to assist relocation. Medical care can be arranged for Mama Zawadi in town. The children can be placed in school elsewhere." Azizi said nothing. The man smiled again, sensing the impact. "You and your family would begin a new life, quietly." with dignity. Azizi looked at Mama Zawadi. Her lips had gone bloodless. She knew the trap before anyone else did. And in return he asked. The younger thug answered this time, voice flat and hard. "You stop talking." Silence dropped over the cave entrance. Asha looked from face to face, confused by the tension. Baraka moved subtly closer to her. Mosi's eyes had turned to flint. The older messenger sighed, as though the bluntness had embarrassed him. "What my colleague means is, the chief believes private healing is wiser than public spectacle. Accusations damage everyone. Villages survive by moving forward, not reopening old wounds." Azizi stepped down from the entrance until he stood level with them. "And what happens?" he asked softly, "if I refuse?" The man's smile disappeared completely. "Then you will discover," he said, "how expensive truth can become." Mama Pendo cursed aloud. The younger thug unfolded his arms. "You have been away too long, Azizi. You do not know how things are done here." Azizi's gaze shifted to him. "I know enough to recognize a coward when one delivers threats for another man." The thug moved faster than expected, but Azizi moved first. Not with a punch. With a step forward so sudden and controlled that the man halted on instinct, uncertain. Azizi's voice stayed calm. "Do it. Strike me here in daylight in front of my mother and these children. Make the next part easier." The thug's nostrils flared. The clerk with the folder backed away. The older messenger intervened again. "No one wants ugliness." Azizi laughed once. "Your chief has fed ugliness to this family for years. Do not act squeamish now." He took the folder from the clerk before they could stop him. The offer was written in sterile language. Property restoration, humanitarian assistance, voluntary resettlement, mutual agreement of silence, no admission of wrongdoing, no mention of Nema, no mention of the children's bloodline, no mention of the lies, the letters, the stolen years. It was blood money with neat margins. Mama Zawadi spoke for the first time, her voice thin but steady. "They want us gone." The older messenger turned to her with false sympathy. "Mama, we want peace for you." She met his eyes, and in that moment Azizi saw the old steel inside her again. "Peace," she said. "You buried me alive in shame and call this peace." The man looked away first. Azizi folded the papers once, then again, then tore them cleanly in half. The sound was small. It felt enormous. The clerk gasped. The thug swore. Mama Pendo whispered, "Good." Azizi let the pieces fall into the dust at the men's feet. "Here is my answer." The younger man lunged a step forward, but Mosi suddenly appeared at Azizi's side, holding the kitchen knife. Not raised, not shaking, simply there. That froze everyone. Azizi's heart clenched. The child should never have needed that instinct. But the sight also carried a message stronger than words. This family had been cornered for too long to fear polite predators anymore. "Go home," Azizi said. The older messenger's face hardened fully now, courtesy stripped away. "You think the village will stand with a woman like her?" He did not point at Mama Zawadi, but he did not need to. It was the cruelest move yet. Reopening the oldest wound, trying to force Azizi to choose between truth and public shame. "She lives in a cave with children nobody can explain." The man continued, "You may love your mother, but the village knows what it sees. We are offering you a way to preserve your own name." There it was, the true temptation. Not money, not land. Distance. The chance to save himself by sacrificing the woman who had already sacrificed everything. Azizi looked at Mama Zawadi. She had gone very still. Not because she doubted him, because part of her expected this to work. Part of her had been trained by suffering to believe that everyone eventually would protect themselves first. That broke something open inside him. He stepped forward, until he was almost nose to nose with the messenger. "You want to know what I choose?" he said. The man did not answer. Azizi pointed back toward the cave. "That woman carried my blood, my sister's children, and the filth of your lies on her back, while men with full stomachs called her dirty. She starved so they could eat. She hid so they could live. If the village cannot see her honor, then the village is blinder than I thought." No one breathed. Azizi's voice rose now not into shouting, but into something sharper, more public, more dangerous. "And hear this clearly, if my mother is shamed, then I carry that shame with her. If these children are rejected, then I stand with them. You cannot buy my name away from my family. You cannot frighten me into abandoning them. And you cannot bury Nema twice." The words struck. Even the messengers felt it. The older one recovered first. "So that is your final answer?" "No," Azizi said. "My final answer will be given in front of the whole village." The men exchanged a quick glance. "Good. Let them worry." Azizi continued. "Before sunset tomorrow, I will call people to the square. Bring Kamau. Bring Jabari. Bring every liar who ever touched this story. I will bring letters, witnesses, and questions that no one will be able to outrun." The clerk went pale. The thug sneered, but weaker now. "And if no one comes?" Azizi smiled without warmth. "They will, because fear travels fast, but scandal travels faster." For the first time, Mama Pendo barked out a laugh. The older messenger turned to leave, then stopped. "You think one day of courage can undo 15 years? Azizi's face did not change. "No, but it can start the bill." The men walked away down the slope, dignity fraying with each step. Mosi stayed beside Azizi until they vanished from sight. Only then did the boy lower the knife. "You should not have said all that," he muttered. Azizi glanced at him. "Why? Because now they know you mean it." Azizi looked toward the valley where the village shimmered beneath the heat and lies of many years. That, he said, was the point. Behind them, Mama Zawadi sank onto the mat as if the last of her strength had gone with the departing men. Mama Pendo crouched beside her. "It has begun." Mama Zawadi closed her eyes. "No," she whispered. Azizi heard her. This was not her fear of conflict, it was a mother's fear of consequences. Because once truth stepped into daylight, it never walked alone. It dragged enemies, memories, and debts behind it. Azizi turned back toward the cave. Tomorrow would not be about anger alone anymore. Tomorrow would be war with witnesses. By mid-morning, the village square had become a courtroom without walls. No drum had been beaten. No official crier had been sent. No written notice had been pinned anywhere. And yet everyone came. That was how villages worked when truth and scandal were about to collide. The square lay beneath a massive fig tree near the market road, where disputes, weddings, speeches, and public shaming had all shared the same dust for generations. Old men arrived first, carrying stools polished by decades of use. Then women came in groups, balancing curiosity and dread on their faces with equal grace. Shopkeepers abandoned half-open shutters. Young boys climbed low branches and parked bicycles against fences. Even those who claimed they wanted no part in family matters found reasons to stand within hearing distance. By the time the sun had climbed high enough to bleach the edges of every shadow, there were more people than Azizi had expected. Good. He stood at one side of the square with Mama Pendo, Mosi Baraka, and Asha. Mama Zawadi had wanted to come. Azizi had almost forbidden it. Then he had seen the look in her eyes, and understood that some battles cost more when fought without the wounded who had survived them. So she came too. Not carried, not hidden. She walked slowly with a stick in one hand, and Asha's fingers in the other, past the same villagers who had watched her sink year after year into silence and disgrace. Murmurs followed her like dry leaves in the wind. Some people looked ashamed. Others looked away. A few looked openly disgusted, as if old lies had become too comfortable to surrender. Azizi stayed close to her, not guiding her, not pitying her, just standing there, so every eye could see what side he had chosen. Across the square, Uncle Jabari appeared first, dressed again in spotless clothes, dignity pulled tight across his face like a mask. He was followed by 2 local administrators, a church elder with cautious eyes, and several men who positioned themselves behind him the way small men cluster near power when they are unsure whether it will survive the day. Chief Kamau arrived last. He came without hurry, surrounded by the kind of silence money and influence create around a man. He wore a tailored tunic of pale linen dark glasses and the easy half-smile of someone accustomed to entering rooms already believed. There was silver at his temples now, and he carried age well, but not innocence. Not even from a distance. Azizi felt Baraka stiffen beside him. Mosi's hand closed into a fist. Even Asha, too young to understand the full geometry of power, edged closer to Mama Zawadi's skirt. Kamau removed his glasses and folded them slowly, as though this were all beneath him. "Azizi," he said, "welcome home." Azizi did not answer. Kamau's gaze drifted to Mama Zawadi, then to the children, then back. "I am sorry this family's pain has become public theater." That line was for the crowd. Everything he would say today was for the crowd. Azizi knew it instantly. Good, he thought. Then let us perform properly. One of the local administrators cleared his throat and stepped forward. "We are gathered to hear concerns raised by Azizi, son of Quito, regarding family land, household disputes, and harmful accusations spreading in the village." Harmful accusations. Mama Pendo muttered. "Listen to how thieves perfume words." A few people nearby heard her and looked down. The administrator continued, "Because important names have been mentioned, we will proceed with order and respect. Anyone who speaks falsely before the community will answer for it." Azizi almost laughed. Answer for it? Where had that promise been when his mother was buried under slander? He stepped forward before anyone else could seize the rhythm. "My concerns are simple," he said, voice ringing clearly across the square. "When I returned after 15 years away, I did not find my mother in her house. I found her living in a cave with 3 children my family was forced to hide. I want answers for how that happened. I want answers for forged property papers. I want answers for intercepted letters. And I want answers about my sister Nema, whose death this village accepted too easily." The square shifted, not loudly, but visibly. People glanced at one another. Shoulders moved. Eyes dropped. Nema's name still had force. Kamau folded his hands. A tragic death should not be used to inflame present confusion. Azizi turned toward him. "Confusion ends when truth begins." Jabari spoke next, smooth and offended. "My nephew has returned after many years and been misled by grief-guilt and outsiders feeding him stories. I took responsibility for family property when his mother became unstable. Everyone here knows the shame this household carried. There it was again. Shame. He kept using it because he believed repetition could still become reality." Azizi looked toward the crowd. "If everyone knows, then let everyone hear details. What exactly was my mother's shame?" No one answered. Jabari did, but too carefully. "She brought disgrace by circumstances we need not repeat before children." Mama Zawadi lifted her chin. Her face was pale, but her voice did not shake. "Repeat them," she said. The square went very still. Jabari blinked. "Repeat them if you are man enough," she said again. "Tell them how you called me filthy, so no one would ask why my grandchildren had no protection. Tell them how you called me mad, so no one would ask why I was pushed from my own home. Tell them how you called me shameless, while men with power used my daughter until she died." A murmur burst through the crowd like a crack running across glass. Kamau's expression sharpened for the first time. The administrator raised both hands. Careful. These are grave words. Azizi nodded. Exactly. That is why I brought more than words. He pulled the letter from inside his shirt. The sight of it affected his mother immediately. So did Kamau. Azizi saw it, a tiny tightening around the mouth, quickly hidden. This, Azizi said, holding it up, is one of many letters my mother wrote to me after I left. Letters I never received. Letters begging me to return, warning me not to believe lies about her, warning me that Nema's death was not what I was told, and telling me that children of my blood were in danger. He handed it to the administrator, who read silently at first, then aloud when pressured by the crowd. Each line landed harder than Azizi had expected, not because the words were dramatic, because desperation written plainly can be more explosive than shouting. When the reading ended, the square erupted into overlapping murmurs. Jabari spread his hands immediately. Anyone can bring an old paper and claim anything. Then let us bring a witness too, Azizi said. Omari stepped from the edge of the crowd. At first, many people did not notice him. Then they did, and recognition spread fast. The trading post clerk, the man who handled letters, the man who had kept his head down for years. He looked as though he regretted every step that had brought him forward. Azizi did not pity him. Omari swallowed and faced the administrator rather than Azizi, which was probably wise. Zawadi brought letters, he said. Many. They were not sent. Some were held, some were taken, by who the administrator asked. Omari hesitated. Kamau's voice cut in smooth as oil. Before you ruin yourself, remember the weight of false testimony. The threat was velvet-wrapped, but everyone heard it. Azizi spoke before fear could swallow the man. He already remembers the weight of silence. That did it. Something in Omari seemed to collapse inward, and then harden. Instructions came from Jabari's people, he said louder now, and sometimes from the chief's compound. The square exploded. Voices rose. Several people spoke at once. Jabari stepped forward angrily. Kamau did not move, but his stillness grew dangerous. The administrator shouted for order. Azizi watched Kamau instead of the crowd. A guilty man under attack sometimes flinches. A practiced guilty man calculates. Kamau was calculating. Omari continued before courage left him. The last letter caused argument. It mentioned Chief Kamau. It mentioned Nema. It said the children were proof. The page tore during the struggle. Now even the elder beside Jabari looked shaken. Jabari recovered first, pointing furiously. Lies from a frightened clerk trying to save himself. Mama Pendo stepped forward. And what about the forged papers? Shall we discuss those too? She snatched a copy from Azizi and thrust it toward the administrators. Look at the signature. Compare it to the letters. Even blind goats can see it is not the same hand. The documents passed from person to person. Old men squinted. Younger ones craned necks. Women who had signed enough market loans in their lives to know the feel of real handwriting whispered among themselves. The tide was moving. Kamau sensed it. So he attacked where the village was weakest reputation. He turned slowly toward the crowd and spoke in a voice perfected for public trust. My heart grieves for this family, he said. But grief can breed convenient stories. We must ask what kind of woman raises 3 children in a cave and hides their parentage, if not one hiding disgrace. We must ask why this son returns only now. We must ask why accusations bloom only when land is involved. It was masterful, cruel, clean, effective. Azizi felt the square wobble. Not because Kamau was right, because he knew exactly which fears to feed. A few heads nodded. A few, too many. Then something unexpected happened. Baraka let go of Mama Zawadi's hand and stepped forward. He was small for his age, thin, quiet, the least likely of them all to break the moment open. But he did. His voice trembled at first. She hid us because men came at night. The square froze. Mama Zawadi whispered Baraka, but he kept going, eyes fixed on the dust. Sometimes we had to move before morning. Sometimes grandmother told us not to cough, not to cry, not to call her mama where people could hear. She said if they knew too much, they would take us away. Or worse. The crowd had gone so silent that every word landed like stone dropped into water. Kamau's face did not change. That terrified Azizi more than if it had. Then Mosi stepped forward too. He did not tremble. He looked directly at Kamau. "You know who we are," he said. That was not accusation. That was recognition. Kamau's gaze shifted to the boy, and for the first time Azizi saw something crack through the polished surface. Not guilt. Annoyance. Contempt. A man looking at a problem that had outlived his plans. Azizi saw it. So did others. Jabari tried to interrupt. "Children are easily coached." "No," came a new voice from the crowd. "Not like that." Everyone turned. It was Tendaji. Azizi's childhood friend stepped into the square with the posture of a man walking toward his own punishment. Sweat darkened his collar. His eyes would not meet Azizi's at first. "I was there the day Nema went to the chief's office the last time," Tendaji said. "I saw her crying by the back road after. I heard Jabari telling someone to keep her quiet. I said nothing. They paid me to say nothing." A collective gasp rolled through the square. Azizi felt anger stab through him, personal now, intimate, but this was not the moment to spend it. Tendaji finally lifted his eyes. "I was a coward," he said. But Nema was not lying. The village shifted again. Now it was not one witness, not one letter, not one grieving son. It was a pattern, and patterns were harder to bury. Kamau straightened, realizing the ground had changed beneath him. "Enough," he said coldly. "This has become slander." Then from behind the front line of villagers, an old woman pushed forward using a stick. No one had noticed her arrive. Mama Rehema, Nema's midwife. Mama Zawadi made a sound so small it was almost a prayer. The old woman reached into her wrapper and pulled out a folded, yellowed piece of paper. Half a page. Torn cleanly down one side. Azizi's heart slammed. "The missing part," Mama Pendo whispered. Mama Rehema lifted it with a shaking hand. "Nema gave me this before she died. Told me to keep it if I valued breath. I have kept it too long." She handed it to the administrator. He joined it with the torn letter Azizi had brought. The edges matched. Perfectly. And when the missing lines were read aloud, the square seemed to stop existing around the words, "If anything happens to me, know this Chief Kamau fathered Mosi and Baraka and sent men after me when I refused to disappear. Asha was born from the violence of the one they sent. My children are proof of what they did. If Azizi returns, tell him Jabari helped them take the house so Mother would have nowhere safe to keep us." No one spoke. No bird sang. Even the market noise beyond the square seemed to die. Azizi looked at Kamau. Kamau did not look shocked. He looked cornered. And for men like him, cornered was when they became most dangerous. For one suspended second, the entire village seemed to forget how to breathe. The reconstructed letter trembled in the administrator's hands. Mama Rehema stood beneath the fig tree with her stick planted firmly in the dust. Her old face lined not only by age, but by the cost of carrying truth too long. Mama Zawadi had one hand over her mouth. Baraka had drifted back toward her side, but Mosi remained in front, rigid as a spear. Asha looked confused, frightened by the silence, more than by the words she could not yet fully understand. And Chief Kamau, carefully dressed, carefully composed, carefully adored, looked for the first time mortal. Not ruined. Not yet. But mortal. Uncle Jabari found his voice first. "This is madness," he barked. "A torn paper, old women, frightened children, and suddenly you want to destroy a respected man." The spell over the square broke into noise. People spoke at once, some in shock, some in anger, some in denial. Azizi could hear fragments everywhere. "Could it be true I told you there was something wrong? No, Kamau would never. What about the letters? What about the house?" The administrator raised both hands and shouted for quiet, but it took time. Too much time. Enough time for fear to begin organizing itself again. Azizi recognized the danger instantly. Truth was now in the square. But truth alone did not win. Truth had to be held long enough to survive the backlash. He stepped forward before Kamau could reclaim the moment with some polished lie. "You all heard it," Azizi said, projecting his voice beyond the first ring of listeners. "My mother did not choose disgrace. It was forced on her. My sister did not die by chance. She was silenced. Those children were not shame. They were evidence." Kamau laughed then. Actually laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. It was the sound of a man deciding that if dignity could not save him, domination still might. "You speak like a boy who has spent too long away," Kamau said. "Do you think paper proves paternity? Do you think accusations from the dead are law? Do you think every bitter woman in this village can point at a man of standing and rewrite history?" That line struck where he wanted it to strike. Old suspicion, old misogyny, old habits of disbelieving women when powerful men stood nearby looking calm. Azizi saw hesitation ripple through parts of the crowd. So did Mama Zawadi, and before he could stop her, she stepped forward. She was trembling, leaning hard on her stick, her body weaker than her will. But when she lifted her face, the whole square watched. "I kept quiet," she said. Her voice was low at first, then stronger. "I kept quiet when they called me dirty. I kept quiet when they took my house. I kept quiet when people spat near my feet. I kept quiet because 3 children needed to stay alive more than I needed to be believed." She turned slowly, letting the crowd see her fully. "But silence did not protect me. It only protected the people who hurt us." No one interrupted her, not even Kamau. She pointed toward him with a shaking hand. "That man destroyed my daughter." A hiss moved through the square. Jabari tried to cut in. "Lies!" Mama Zawadi swung toward him so sharply that even he stopped. "And you," she said, voice sharpening like broken glass, "you helped him?" The words landed harder than shouting. People knew Kamau's power. They feared it. But Jabari was one of them. A blood relative. A man who had eaten at the family table. Betrayal inside a family always burns differently. More intimately. More unforgivably. Jabari's confidence faltered. "I did what was necessary to preserve what Azizi snapped. The family. Or the land." Jabari's eyes flashed. "You left. You were gone. Someone had to manage what remained." Azizi stepped toward him. "Manage, is that what you call forging her name?" The administrator looked up from the papers. "The signature issue is serious." "Serious," Mama Pendo burst out. "He stole a widow's house." The church elder beside Jabari shifted uncomfortably. "If forgery is proven?" "If," Mama Pendo said. "Open your eyes." The square tilted further. Not yet toward justice, but away from blind obedience. Kamau sensed it too. Azizi could see calculation moving behind his eyes, quick and cold. A man like Kamau did not fear moral judgment. He feared structural collapse. He feared witnesses becoming a crowd becoming a record, and a record becoming something that could no longer be buried with cash or threats. Then he did something Azizi had not expected. He turned to the administrators and said very calmly, "Then let there be a formal investigation." The square quieted again. Azizi narrowed his eyes. Kamau continued, "I welcome it, because I have nothing to hide. That was for the weak-hearted, for the people already seeking a reason to retreat from discomfort. A formal investigation could mean delay. Delay meant pressure. Pressure meant disappearing witnesses, rewritten statements, bribes, intimidation, a fire here, an accident there." Azizi saw the trap immediately. So did Mama Pendo. "No," she said aloud. "He wants time." Kamau ignored her. Until such matters are properly reviewed, it would be irresponsible to spread further scandal. There it was. Freeze the moment. Buy time. Rebuild control. Azizi opened his mouth, but an unexpected sound cut through the square before he could speak. A violent cough. He turned. Mama Zawadi had bent double. One hand clutched her chest, the other gripped the stick so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Then came another cough, deeper tearing, and blood touched her lips. Asha screamed. Baraka lunged to catch her as her knees buckled. Azizi reached her first, dropping to the ground as she collapsed against him, frighteningly light in his arms. "Mama!" The world exploded into motion. Voices, feet, dust, panic. Mama Pendo knelt beside them at once. Mosey stood frozen for half a second, then moved with terrifying speed, clearing space, glaring at anyone who came too close. Asha sobbed openly now. Baraka was crying without sound. Mama Zawadi tried to speak, but blood and breath tangled in her throat. Azizi's terror was absolute. Everything else vanished. Kamau, Jabari. The crowd, the documents, gone. Only his mother remained. He cradled her head. "Stay with me. Stay with me." Her fingers clawed weakly at his sleeve. Her lips moved. He leaned closer. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The words shattered him. "No," he said fiercely. "No, don't say that. Don't you dare say that." Mama Pendo pressed cloth to her mouth, eyes grim with the kind of knowledge poor women carry, because sickness too often comes before help. "This has been in her for a long time," she said quietly. "Too long." Azizi felt rage and helplessness collide so hard inside him he thought he might lose his mind. How many nights had she coughed in that cave while the village slept under roofs? How many mornings had she risen bleeding and still fed the children first? He looked up straight at the crowd, then at Kamau, then at Jabari. And in that moment, something changed in the square. Not because truth had been read, because suffering had become visible. No rumor, no abstract disgrace. A real woman, a ruined body, a mother collapsing in the dust after carrying other people's sins for years. People recoiled from what they had helped ignore. The church elder stepped forward at last. "She needs a clinic. She needed one years ago," Mama Pendo shot back. Azizi gathered Mama Zawadi into his arms. Kamau spoke then carefully. "Take her to town." "My vehicle can," No, Azizi said without even looking at him. The refusal came out like iron. He rose with his mother in his arms. She was lighter than memory. Too light. That frightened him more than the blood. Mosi moved instantly to Baraka and Asha. Mama Pendo snatched up the letters and papers before anyone could touch them. The administrator called after Azizi. "We are not finished here." Azizi turned halfway, his face transformed by grief into something colder than fury. "Yes," he said. "We are." He let those words hang just long enough to be misunderstood. Then he added, voice low and deadly clear, "For years you all watched a woman die in pieces. Now you've seen enough to choose whether you are witnesses or accomplices." No one answered. He carried Mama Zawadi out of the square. Behind him the village split open. Some voices rose in anger at Kamau. Some defended him. Some shouted for police. Some shouted for silence. Jabari was yelling at the administrators. The administrators were trying to restore order. The church elder was calling for calm in God's name. Asha was crying. Baraka kept looking back. Mosi did not. Halfway up the slope, Mama Zawadi stirred faintly in Azizi's arms. He lowered his head toward hers. Her voice was barely there. "You know now," she whispered. "Yes. Then listen." Her breath rattled. "I pushed you away. Years ago. Not because I stopped loving you." Azizi's eyes burned. "I know." "No." She struggled for air. "You don't. I told them. To let people think you chose distance. I helped the lie grow at the end." He nearly stumbled. What Mama Pendo walking beside him went still. Mama Zawadi's fingers tightened weakly against his shirt. "They said if you came back, you would die like Nema. So I said let him hate me. Let him stay away. Let one child live." The words entered him like a blade wrapped in love. Azizi could not speak for several seconds. All those years. Not abandonment. Protection twisted into silence. He looked down at her face, grey with exhaustion, and felt his heart break in a new place. "You should have never had to choose that," he said. A tear escaped from the corner of her eye. "No, Mother," she whispered. By the time they reached the cave, the sun had begun to lower. The sky above the ridge had turned the color of bruised gold. Azizi laid her gently on the mat. Baraka fetched water with shaking hands. Asha curled against Mama Pendo. Mosi stood near the entrance, staring down at the village, as if trying to memorize the shape of every enemy below. Azizi knelt beside his mother. The square had not ended anything. It had only stripped away the final disguise. Now Kamal was exposed. Jabari was exposed. The village was exposed. And Mama Zawadi, bleeding, exhausted, yet still shielding her son, even in confession, had given Azizi the one thing grief alone could not provide. A reason larger than revenge. He was no longer fighting only to punish the guilty. He was fighting to make sure her suffering had not been endured in vain. The rain came before dawn. It began as a soft tapping on stone, then built into a steady drumming over the hillside, washing dust from the thorn bushes and turning the narrow path below the cave into dark, slippery clay. Inside, the children slept in fragments. Asha clung to Mama Pendo's side. Baraka dozed, sitting up as if afraid that lying down too fully might make him vulnerable. Mosi remained near the cave mouth with his knees pulled up, staring into the grey morning like a guard too young for war. Azizi had not closed his eyes. He sat beside Mama Zawadi through the entire night, changing the damp cloth on her forehead, lifting water to her lips, listening to every breath as if sheer attention could keep death from taking another person he loved. At sunrise, a vehicle engine growled below the hill. Everybody in the cave stiffened. Mosi reached for the kitchen knife. Azizi rose at once and stepped outside. A white pickup truck was forcing its way up the muddy path, sliding twice before catching grip. Behind it came 2 motorcycles and a smaller car. For one raw second, Azizi thought Kamau had come to finish what fear and sickness had started. Then the first truck door opened, and out stepped a woman in a dark government jacket, carrying a folder and an expression that did not belong to the village. Behind her came 2 uniformed officers. Not local watchmen. District police. Mama Pendo appeared at Azizi's shoulder and let out a breath. God has not fully abandoned us. The woman looked up the slope. Azizi, yes. I'm Inspector Njeri from the district office. We received a statement from the administrative post late last night, along with copies of letters, witness names, and a request for emergency intervention. Her gaze moved past him toward the cave entrance. We also received a complaint about land fraud coercion and possible obstruction of correspondence. Azizi blinked once. He had expected resistance. Delay. Silence. Not this. Jerry seemed to read his face. The square became louder than some people intended. Good, he thought. Let noise do useful work for once. She continued. Chief Kamau and Jabari are being questioned. Travel restrictions are already in place until the district magistrate reviews the file. A sound escaped Mama Pendo, half laugh, half sob. Azizi's shoulders did not fully relax. Not yet. My mother needs medical help first. Inspector Njeri nodded immediately. That is why the clinic team came behind us. Only then did Azizi notice the second woman climbing from the truck with a metal case in hand and a young medic carrying supplies under plastic sheeting. Inside the cave, everything changed quickly. The children shrank back at first when strangers entered. Mosi tried to block the medic until Azizi put a hand on his shoulder and said, They're here to help. Baraka hovered near the water bucket, desperate to be useful. Asha began to cry again when they unfolded a stretcher, but Mama Pendo gathered her close and whispered, No, little bird. This time, people are carrying life, not danger. Mama Zawadi opened her eyes when the medic checked her pulse. For one frightened instant, she tried to sit up. Azizi leaned close. Mama, it's all right. Her gaze moved from his face to the uniforms, to the medical bag, to the children. Then she understood enough to whisper, Don't let them split the children. No one is taking them from us, Azizi said. The promise came out before he had thought through all the law logistics and future pain tied to it. But the moment it left his mouth, he knew it was true. Not if he had to burn the remains of his old life and build a new one from ash. The clinic in town was small, crowded, and underfunded. Its walls were painted a color that had once been cheerful and now looked tired. But to Azizi, it felt like a palace compared to the cave. Mama Zawadi was admitted before noon. The doctor, a lean man with serious eyes and no wasted words, ordered tests. Fluids, rest, and treatment for what he described as a long-neglected chest infection made worse by years of exposure, malnutrition, and exhaustion. He did not promise miracles. Azizi respected him more for that. She is not beyond help, the doctor said privately. But she is beyond postponement. That sentence stayed with Azizi. Beyond postponement. It described more than illness. It described everything. By afternoon, word had spread across the district. Kamau's compound had been searched. Papers had been taken. Jabari's accounts were being examined. The clerk from the land office, confronted with signatures and witness testimony, had begun to talk. So had the driver once attached to Kamau's office. Old fear was cracking now that powerful men were no longer untouchable in the minds of others. Justice had not arrived cleanly. It rarely did. It came messy late, and only after years of damage. But it had finally begun to move. Azizi rented 2 rooms behind the clinic that same day. One for Mama Pendo and the children. One for himself, though he barely used it. That first night in town, Asha refused to sleep on the bed because it felt too soft to trust. Baraka stood at the window for a long time, watching electric lights blink across the street as if he were seeing a different planet. Mosi said almost nothing, but Azizi noticed that he inspected every lock twice before settling into a chair instead of the mattress. Trauma had built a village of habits inside those children. Azizi did not try to tear those habits down all at once. He simply stayed. He brought them food and ate with them instead of watching them eat. He took Baraka to buy exercise books and sandals. He found Asha a yellow ribbon because she had stared too long at one in a market stall and then pretended she hadn't. He bought Mosi a proper school bag and pretended not to notice the boy's eyes redden before he turned away. And every evening, no matter how tired he was, Azizi sat beside Mama Zawadi's bed. Some nights she slept through his visits. Some nights she woke and watched him as though she still could not fully believe he was real. On the 4th evening she was strong enough to speak for longer than a few breaths. The window was open. Rain-washed air drifted through the room. Outside, someone laughed in the clinic courtyard. Somewhere a baby cried, then quieted. Life continued in ordinary sounds, and perhaps because of that, the moment felt softer. Mama Zawadi turned her head toward him. "How are the children eating too much bread and pretending they don't like tea?" Azizi said. A faint smile touched her mouth. "That means they are becoming safe enough to complain." He smiled too, then grew quiet. After a moment she asked, "And you?" Azizi looked down at his hands. "I don't know yet." That was the truest answer he had. He did not know how to carry 15 lost years without resentment. He did not know how to mourn Nema now that her children had faces, voices, and habits that echoed her. He did not know how to forgive himself for staying away so long, even with all the lies. He did not know whether what he felt toward Kamau and Jabari would ever become something less consuming than rage. But he did know this leaving again was impossible. Mama Zawadi studied him for a long while. "You do not have to punish yourself forever." He let out a breath that almost became a laugh. That sounds like something said by a woman who punished herself for everyone. Her eyes softened. "Maybe that is why I know the cost." He bowed his head. "I thought you stopped loving me," he admitted. She closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them again, there were tears there. "Never." One word. 15 years answered. Azizi leaned forward and rested his forehead lightly against the blanket near her hand, not trusting himself to speak yet. She slid her fingers into his hair, like she had when he was a boy, too stubborn to cry after falling from trees. The gesture undid him. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. When he finally lifted his head, he said the thing that had already become true in his heart. "I'm taking responsibility for them. For Mosi Baraka and Asha. Whatever papers it takes, whatever people say, they are ours." Mama Zawadi cried then, not with despair, but with the strange pain of relief when a burden carried too long is finally lifted by another pair of hands. "I prayed for that," she whispered, "every night in that cave." Days passed. Then a week. The district case grew teeth. Chief Kamau was suspended from all local authority, pending criminal proceedings. Jabari was removed from the house and publicly named in the land fraud investigation. More witnesses emerged once the first ones survived speaking. Women who had once lowered their eyes now lifted them. Men who had hidden behind respectability began distancing themselves from Kamau's name. The old machinery of fear did not vanish, but it stopped running smoothly. And then, on a bright morning after rain, Azizi took the children back to the family house. Not alone, with district officers present, with corrected documents in hand, with Mama Pendo walking as if she had personally chased out every liar, with Mama Zawadi beside them in a wheelchair wrapped in a clean shawl, thinner still but upright seen and no longer hidden. The yard was full of villagers pretending not to gather. Let them watch, Azizi thought. They watched as the locks were changed. They watched as Jabari's remaining things were carried out. They watched as Mama Zawadi was rolled across the threshold of the home stolen from her. She stopped just inside the doorway. Her eyes moved over the walls, the floor, the windows, the place where memory and theft had fought for years. For a moment, Azizi feared the pain would be too much. Then Mama Zawadi placed one hand on the doorframe and whispered, "I came back alive." Mama Pendo wept openly. Asha ran straight to the window where sunlight pooled and laughed at the way dust danced there. Baraka found the corner that would become his study space before anyone told him he could have one. Mosi stood in the center of the room, turning slowly, still not fully trusting permanence. Azizi went to him. "You don't have to guard the door every second anymore," he said gently. Mosi shrugged, but his voice was smaller than usual. "Maybe not every second." Azizi nodded. Fair. It was not a declaration of love. Not yet. but it was the first joke between them. That evening they ate together on the veranda under the jacaranda tree. Simple food. Hot stew. Fresh bread. Tea sweetened more than necessary because Asha liked it that way. No one rushed, no one whispered, no one listened for footsteps in the dark. At sunset, the sky burned orange over the hills where the cave still sat unseen from the house, a wound in the rock that would always exist in memory, even if no one slept there again. Mosi reached into his pocket and placed a small object on the table. A stone. Grey. Ordinary. Cave-worn. Azizi looked at it, then at the boy. "I took it from there," Mosi said. Baraka frowned. "Why would you keep that?" Mosi touched the stone with one finger. "So we don't forget." No one argued. Mama Zawadi's eyes filled, but this time the tears did not come from helplessness. They came from survival. Azizi looked around the table at his mother, at the children, at Mama Pendo, at the home that had nearly been erased from them, and understood that healing was not the same as undoing. The years were still gone. Nema was still gone. The damage was real. But so was this moment. So was the roof above them. So was the truth. So was the family that had crawled out of shame and stone and chosen somehow not just to live, but to begin again. He placed his hand over the small cave stone and left it there, not as a symbol of what had been stolen, but as proof that even the darkest place had failed to keep them forever. What this story leaves behind is more than pain. It leaves a truth many people spend their whole lives learning too late. Silence can protect evil, but love, when it finally chooses courage, can break generations of darkness. Mama Zawadi lost her home, her name, her safety, and nearly her life, yet she still chose to protect the innocent. Azizi lost 15 years to lies, distance, and manipulation. Yet when the truth finally found him, he did not run from responsibility. He stepped into it. That is the real power of love. Not words, not promises, sacrifice, endurance, moral courage. This story reminds us that family is not only about blood. It is about who stays, who protects, who stands in the fire when everyone else steps back. It also reminds us that justice may come late, but truth has a strange strength. Once it rises, no amount of fear can fully bury it again. And perhaps the deepest lesson of all is this: being wounded does not mean you are finished. Even after betrayal, humiliation, and loss, healing is still possible. When truth is faced, responsibility is accepted, and love is lived out in action. If this story touched your heart, tell me in the comments which moment affected you the most and what lesson stayed with you after the ending. And if you believe stories about truth, justice, and healing still matter in this world, subscribe to the channel and join us for more powerful journeys like this.